So I, 18F, have been helping out my sick brother, 26M, financially for the past 2 years. He had been diagnosed with osteosarcoma 2.5 years back, and that made it very difficult for him to find the kind of work that he had been used to so far. He never went to college because our father passed away around the same time and we had never really had a lot of money to begin with. His passing just made it worse for us because my mother had never worked a day in her life because she got married really young and had always been a stay-at-home mom. My brother was just around 18 at the time and I was just 10 years old. So he had to step it up and start taking care of the family, which is why he had to skip college and start looking for jobs immediately. My mother also did the same and thankfully, we had a few neighbors to help us out in our initial stages while we were still trying to come to terms with my father's passing. He passed away in a car accident, so it was all very sudden, and we did not have any time to prepare ourselves. Luckily, I was old enough to look out for myself by then, so at least they did not have to spend money on childcare for me. Even then, there were a lot of expenses and I remember my mom and my brother being extremely stressed out throughout my childhood. Things were rough, even when my dad was around, since my parents had eloped and so, they did not have anybody looking out for them and had to build a life for themselves from scratch. But at least when my dad was around, everyone was dealing with things happily because he was just the life of the party. He was that guy who could lighten up a room by walking into it. After his death, the reality of the situation started to sink in, and I don't think any of us have been properly happy ever since. Anyway, after my brother's diagnosis, it became very obvious that he couldn't continue the kind of work that he was doing because he had been a warehouse worker ever since he started working. Most of his jobs in the past had involved a lot of physical labor, and we did not want him to risk that after his diagnosis. He had been pushing it anyway, even before, but eventually, he had to give up. My mother still continued to work, but a receptionist's income was not enough for the family. So I decided to start contributing to the family's expenses as well, and I have been working part-time since I was 14, but instead of saving up that money for college and an apartment, I started contributing to my brother's medical expenses as well. Because without a job, he did not have healthcare anymore, and we had to pay for everything out of our own pockets. It was extremely expensive, but it had to be done, and once in a while, we even had to dip into my mom and brother's savings. Several times, I had suggested that we should appeal to some non-profit organizations or the hospital itself because I'm pretty sure that there are programs for people like us, but my mom and my brother had always been too proud. They believed that as long as they can afford it, they would like to hold their heads up high and would not accept charity. They did not even allow me to start a GoFundMe campaign for my brother, even though it would be anonymous, and that's how I ended up sacrificing all my savings that I had been putting together since the age of 14 just for my family. And in spite of all of that, they had the audacity to kick me out a couple of months ago just because my brother decided that he wanted his girlfriend to move in with him for support. His girlfriend, Maria, 22F, has been with him for the past 2 years. She started dating him a little before his diagnosis, and I expected them to break up by the time he told her about his sickness, but to my surprise, she decided to stick with him. Initially, we didn't know much about her. She was very shy, and every time that she would visit, she would only talk to my brother and then leave. We had insisted that she have dinner at our place, but she always refused, saying that she had to go back to her aunt. It was later on that we found out that she was an orphan. Her parents had left her with her aunt before going on vacation, and unfortunately, they never came back. It is still not known whether they got into an accident or not, but it's unlikely that they have been well and alive for so many years and haven't bothered to contact her. Even if they are alive, they are as good as dead to her because she has spent her entire life without them. She comes from a similar financial background, and she met my brother when she started working at the coffee shop opposite my brother's workplace. I really liked her in the beginning. She seemed quiet but sweet, and after she began to open up to us, I thought that she and my brother could really make it since she was willing to stand by him, even in such dire circumstances. But eventually, I started to see her differently when I found out that my brother would help her out financially as well. He would occasionally tell us that he had given a certain amount of money to her for her expenses because apparently, her aunt did not treat her well at all, and she really needed the money so she could put together a reasonable amount and move out eventually. After she had turned 18, her aunt did not allow her to live with her for free and forced her to get a job so she could pay rent and contribute all the other expenses as well. And she was struggling to keep up with that as well as putting aside money for her future, so my brother had decided to help her out a bit. I thought it was stupid because we were barely managing to scrape by ourselves, and here he was, trying to help out his girlfriend. My mother, however, did not find anything wrong with it and kept trying to convince me that it was fine because he was doing it for love. And if she was ready to sacrifice everything just to be with him, then this is the least that my brother could do for her. The thing is, I wasn't sure exactly how much she was having to sacrifice because as far as I knew, having cancer doesn't really mean that my brother shouldn't have a life of his own like everyone else does. So for my mother to make it seem like Maria was doing him a favor by being with him was kind of weird for me, but I didn't say anything about it. At the end of the day, we were all family, and I knew that no matter what, we were going to stick together and make everything work. That's how my father had intended for things to be, and I know that that's how it was going to work. I had done the math before I graduated and figured out by the end of last year that there was no way I would be able to go to college or get an apartment of my own because I did not have enough money saved up for myself since I was contributing to the family as well, but I was okay with that. I didn't even tell anyone about it because I didn't want my mom or my brother to feel bad and silently continue to work full time so that I would be able to support my family. But around 2 months ago, my mom suddenly approached me and told me that she wanted me to find a place of my own and move out. That took me by surprise because I had just turned 18 and I had honestly just believed that like my brother had started working and continued to live in our home, I would be doing the same. When I asked my mother why she was asking me to move out, she told me that my brother had asked Maria to move in with him because she had gotten into a really nasty fight with her aunt and apparently, she just couldn't go back to her anymore. She needed a place to crash and our house was too small for all of us to stay together. My mom knew that I had some money set aside, so she wanted me to move out and she believed that it would also be good for my brother to have Maria around for emotional support. I just couldn't believe that she was going to treat me like that after I had sacrificed everything just to be there for my family, and initially, I refused to leave, but then she said that I was being selfish because we were not even sure how much more time my brother had. It was all just ridiculous, and after the discussion with my mother, I even spoke to my brother about it, hoping that this would not have been his idea, but unfortunately, it was. He said that he was really thankful for everything that I had done for him, but he just wanted this one last favor from me as well because if he was going to pass away sooner than everyone else, then he would rather have Maria around him at the very least. His condition hadn't improved in a really long time, but it hadn't deteriorated as well, so it was not like he was constantly at risk of dropping dead. And hypothetically, even if he was, I found it strange that he would rather have Maria around, his girlfriend who had been there with him for just 2 years, than his own family, especially me. Unlike Maria, I was actually the one who had made real sacrifices, like my future and my education. But after he told me that he really loved her and wanted her to be with her and he was even ready to ask me to move out for that, I realized that I had sacrificed everything in vain, and it was completely not worth it. Out of sheer spite, I decided to move out and cut ties with them because clearly, this was not the kind of family that my dad had envisioned. Had my father been around, he never would have allowed this to happen. But unfortunately, he was not here anymore, and I had to look out for myself. Rather than staying in a place where I was clearly unwanted, I decided to move out and stay with a couple of friends for the first few weeks until I found a place of my own. I was finally able to find a dingy little apartment in a really bad neighborhood that I would be sharing with 2 roommates, but at least the rent was affordable. At that point, I was honestly just thankful to have even found that kind of a place, and I felt lucky to even have a roof over my head because I did not want to be a burden on my friends and their parents since most of them were not exactly well versed about my situation. I was also pretty lucky to have kind roommates who became friends with me pretty quickly. Both of them also have their own share of struggles, and all I can say is that none of us come from a financially stable background, which is probably why they were able to resonate with me and they were so kind to me. For the past 2 months, after I left, I have had absolutely no contact with my family and I really miss them because before everything went wrong, I was really close with them. I couldn't even imagine a day when I wouldn't speak to them, but here I was, living without them. They did not bother to reach out to me after I left, which is even more. Especially after everything that I had given up for the sake of my brother, at least he should have reached out to me. I had never even blocked them because I had kept expecting them to reach out to me at some point, but unfortunately, they did not do so until recently. And even then, it was to demand my help, not to apologize. My mom called me up a couple of days back and she was really upset. I thought that she was going to apologize, so that's why I picked up that call, but then, she told me that apparently she was calling me to tell me that Maria had pulled off a disappearing act and had broken up with my brother over text the previous night. Apparently, she had sent him a text, saying that she had really tried very hard to make this work, but she couldn't wrap her head around the fact that eventually, he was going to pass away, and she would be left all alone. Before she had to deal with that, she wanted to cut him out of her life so that it would hurt less when he finally left her. She had told him not to contact her again and said that she was going really far away. For the past 2 months, she had been living with my family without paying any rent or even contributing to any other expenses. She had been living for completely free, and so, she had been able to put together enough money to leave. So she had thanked all of us for allowing her to live with him, but now, she had to think about herself as well. In simple words, she had played my brother for a fool and used him. I didn't even think it was possible for a human being to use somebody as poor as us, especially one who was suffering from cancer, but Maria had done the unthinkable. You have to hand it to her, she played it pretty smartly. She knew she was not pretty or well off enough to even make it into a relationship with somebody richer than my brother, so she played it safe, but clever, and had my brother wrapped around her finger. And then, she just tossed him aside when she realized that she didn't need him anymore. Just like my family had done to me if we really think about it. So when my mother told me that she needed my help to fix this, saying that my brother was miserable and couldn't stop crying, I needed to help her track down where Maria was and at least get her to talk to my brother, so he would get some sense of closure. But I simply laughed at her and said that this was karma for what they had done to me, and I hoped that he never got any sort of closure because after how they treated me, they simply did not deserve it. And then I hung up without another word and blocked them. After that, I spoke to my roommates about it and both of them were a bit skeptical regarding my reaction to the situation. Of course, they haven't said that I have done anything wrong and they think that my reaction was completely valid and so are my feelings about this. They said that if they were in my place, they probably would have done something similar. But then, they said something that really got me thinking. They asked me if this is how I really wanted to end my relationship with my mom and my brother because at the end of the day, no matter what they have done, he is still not going to make it for long. They said that if my brother was not a cancer patient, they might have reacted differently, but given the circumstances, they want me to think about what I want to do because they don't think that I should regret anything in the future. That's all that they said. They did not push me to apologize to them or reach out to them again, but it was enough for me to start thinking about whether what I had done was right or not. Just to be clear, I do not want anybody hating my roommates because they have really been there for me and all they are trying to do is give me a different perspective on the situation. They have not been pushing me to do anything. They are respectful of my feelings, and I really want everyone in the comments to be respectful of them as well, even if they don't agree with what they believe. Anyway, I have thought about it for a couple of days and I haven't been able to come to a conclusion, so I'm here to ask. Ida for telling my mom and my brother that it's karma that his girlfriend dumped him and left after freeloading for 2 months? Edit, my parents eloped because both my grandparents were not in agreement with their relationship. I don't know the details of it, to be honest, since neither of my parents ever bothered to tell us about it. They have always been very secretive and private about their past, which is why I have never been able to figure out why exactly we had to run away. All I know is that our families do not approve of the relationship that my parents had and by extension, they probably wouldn't approve of us either. That's why we haven't ever had any contact with anybody from our families. Even if I had wanted to reach out to them, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I didn't even know their names. So approaching them for any sort of help had always been out of the question. As for why Maria never moved out to live with any of her other relatives, I don't really know why. I never bothered to ask because I had always been very busy with work and I only knew her as my brother's girlfriend. We were not close personally. So I didn't want to come off as prying and ask such personal questions. Anyway, I hope that clears up any doubts that people might have had. Update 1. Hi, so I thought about it and I decided to have a discussion with my roommates about what they had said. I think it was better to just get everything out of the way since even if they hadn't pushed me to do anything, they did have their own opinions, and I felt like I had to share why I had done what I had done. So I explained my entire situation to them once again, even though they already knew everything. After hearing me out once again, they told me they were really not going to judge me. It was then that I found out that one of my roommates had also left her family behind before she moved here and it had been kind of a similar situation for her, in the sense that she and her dad had had a huge fight before she moved away because he wanted her to stay back with them and learn the ropes of the family business, but she wanted to move out and pursue a degree in literature, which is why she had moved here against all the odds and without any support from her family. So she hadn't been in touch with her family for almost 6 months and then one day, her mother finally called her up to inform her that her dad had passed away from a heart attack in the middle of the night and her only regret so far was the fact that she hadn't tried to make it right with him even once. She did attend his funeral, but everyone in her family seemed to be very judgmental, so she never bothered to contact anyone after that. She does occasionally speak to her mother, but they are not very close anymore. Of course, I am free to do what she did and that's why the two of them had shared their opinion on the situation. Ultimately, I thank them for looking out for me and they thank me for respecting their opinion without making a big deal out of it. There was never really a fight, to begin with, but even then, we were able to clear the air and it's all good. They can understand where I'm coming from and I can totally understand why they said what they did. I know that they are not judging me and I'm going to stick to my decision of not speaking to my mom or my brother until they apologize. And just because I have blocked them, it doesn't mean that they don't have any means to apologize to me. I have only blocked their phone numbers. They can still contact me on social media, and unless they reach out to me to genuinely apologize, I'm not speaking a word to them. And it's not like they haven't exactly tried to reach out to me, but it's not the way that I would expect them to. I don't know why they felt the need to involve other people in this, but instead of just talking to me themselves, they decided to get our neighbor involved. Our next door neighbor, Jennifer, has been one of my mom's oldest friends. She is a single woman in her late 40s, she never married and doesn't have any family of her own and she always used to look out for us when we were kids. So I have a lot of respect for her in my heart and I have always liked her, but I think this time, she shouldn't have interfered because she doesn't know what I have been through. She texted me yesterday and told me that my mother and my brother were very upset about how I was treating them and as somebody who has watched me grow up, she never expected me to act like this. She said that apparently she had hoped that I would understand that my brother was really in love with Maria and he wanted her back, even if it was for just one last goodbye. But instead of trying to be there for him and support him during such a bleak time of his life, I was turning my back on my family, and she even said that my father would have been really disappointed in my behavior. First things first, I'm not sure what I can do about Maria leaving him because it's not like we are friends. I can't convince her to come back, so I already have nothing I can do to help them out. And secondly, it's very convenient that they are all skipping out on what they did to me. If my father had known about that, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have been pleased about that. Because I had sacrificed everything for my family and what did they do? They sacrificed their relationship with me for Maria, Somebody they barely even knew. So thank you but no thank you, Jennifer, I don't owe my family anything. Not anymore, at least. Update 2. Hello, it has been almost 2 weeks since Jennifer contacted me. I did not think that my mom or my brother would bother to speak to me again. I thought wrong, I guess. This morning, they visited me and of course, I cut off the friend who gave them my address. I know for a fact that after that phone call, my mother told me Maria had left, and they would definitely try to find out where I was living. So I had given all my friends very strict and specific instructions that if my family tried to contact them and get them to give them my address, they were just supposed to ignore it and block them if need be. But at no cost were they supposed to tell them where I was living because if they found out, they would definitely keep bothering me again and again. And I did not have the time, money, or energy to relocate. And yet, an idiot friend of mine decided to ignore my instructions and give them my address because he thought he was doing me a favor by trying to reunite me with my family. I mean, who cares what I really want? Anyway, enough about him. After my family found out that I was living, they decided to visit me because I had blocked them everywhere else and apparently, they did not think that speaking to me on social media was appropriate for a discussion like this. It was just ridiculous and I refused to even open the door to them, but they told me that they would stand outside all day if they needed to, but they would not leave without speaking to me. My roommates were also both at home so I asked them if they would be fine with me inviting my family in and then they said that they wouldn't mind, so I finally decided to invite them inside. It was not out of warmth or forgiveness, I just invited them inside so we could talk about whatever they wanted to talk to me about and then put an end to this once and for all. I did not want them to keep disturbing me since I was trying really hard to move on from the past and this was not helping. I thought that at least now, they would apologize but even now, they did not think that it was necessary and continued to speak about how horrible they were feeling about everything and since I was family, they needed me to be there for them. They did not apologize but said that they really missed me and wanted me to come back home. Besides, they apparently did not think it was safe for me to live in such a terrible neighborhood. I found that laughable because for the past 2 months, they had not even bothered to find out where I was and now, they were worried about my safety all of a sudden. I made it very clear to them that I had invited them only because I wanted to tell them that I did not want them around me or trying to contact me anymore. They had several chances to apologize to me and at least try to make amends with me, but it seemed like they did not care about anything apart from themselves and their own feelings. They were incredibly selfish people and I wanted nothing to do with them anymore because I had to think of my future as well, just like Maria had said. So while I really appreciated their concern at this point, I did not need them to come take me back with them. They started getting offended at that point and said that they did not think that they had anything to apologize for because my brother had only tried to help out and he had no idea that it would backfire like this. I had started losing my temper by then because I couldn't believe that they were still trying to justify what they had done because in my opinion, there was just no way to make it make sense. So I was very rude to them and eventually, they stopped fighting with me and trying to argue with me and said that if I really didn't want them to talk to me anymore, then they would gladly cut ties with me. And they said that they had come here to make me feel sense, but obviously, that was not going to be possible. I agree, that's not going to be possible because people like them could never understand me and someone like me is never going to understand where they are coming from. So then, they finally left and when my roommates finally came back out, they actually apologized to me because they had no idea that my family was like this. Anyway, now that's all done and I only have to think about my future now. My family did not care about me when I needed them and now, I'm gonna treat them the same way. Update 3. Hello. It has been close to a year since I left home and I've been doing pretty well for myself. I had been working as a floor worker at the local grocery store for the past couple of months but recently I got hired as a salesperson in a furniture company and it's a pretty big deal because I'm gonna be making more money now. I'm still living with my roommate, but we are planning on moving into a bigger apartment together pretty soon since we have all been putting aside money. I have not had any contact with my family since the last time that we met. I know that my brother is doing all right since I'm pretty sure that Jennifer would let me know if something had happened to him. I hope that all of them are well and maybe someday in the future they will come to their senses and try to reconcile with me and I might be open to it. But for now, I'm very happy with my life.